Hello everyone, it's Cyrano here. Today I'm going to do my review on Civilization V, which has just come out recently. And I'm going to be doing this one live as I go through the game because it's a slower paced game and I'll be able to point out a few things about the game as I go through. Now the first thing I'd like to talk about is the graphics of the game. They're quite good. You can zoom all the way in. Probably the worst part of the game are these rivers here. I'll just point them out. Now, you zoom into a city like this. Sprawling city, takes up the tiles around. Looks great. You even have reflections on the buildings here from the sunlight. Looks great. These little trading posts here, these little towns. Probably the worst part of the game graphically, because you've got here farms which all interconnect, which looks great. But for some reason they don't interconnect the towns, which makes them look a bit hodge and splodgy all over the place. Even your mines look great, they sort of connect up, look great there. Now, moving on from the graphics, Civilization V makes a few differences from Civilization 4. The first thing I probably should point out after the graphics is the game uses a grid-based system. Now I've turned the grid on here. As you can see, they're hex tiles. Okay, usually this gives a better tactical use. So you can't get attacked diagonally from the corners and that sort of thing anymore. Now, with that, the game uses a range system for ranged units. Now this here is a mobile artillery, fires missiles. You press the B key, which is bombard, and it brings up a little red line here. Okay, and that's your range. You can fire anything in there. Now, there are issues. This is the modern age that I'm in right now. This is a game late in the game, 2014, so 4 years in the future. And something like rocket artillery can fire 3 squares. It can fire over obstacles like mines and forests, that sort of thing. But if you're playing in, say, gunpowder age, things like cannons will not fire over trees and mountains and that sort of thing. So you have to use that tactically. So I've had a computer which has put a whole bunch of cannons here, and I've tried to come through here. I can't shoot at them. I have to come through, and as I do, they'd blow the heck out of me. So things like that on the terrain do affect range combat like that. The other type of combat is plane based. Now planes have a much bigger range, about 10 squares long. If I can find some planes, I'll show you. Here we go. Alright, that's not going to work. Alright. Now moving on from combat. The game generally has moved into a much broader sense. So you don't have to micromanage your cities as much as you had to in Civ 4 and previous Civ games. It's generally an empire-wide sort of control. So generally you've got your science up here, which is based on the population of your nation. So if you're trying to increase that, the best way to do it is just increase your growth, get big cities, and you'll have a lot of science running. So this is good because when you're in war, in the old Civs, pretty much your technology went down the drain. As soon as you went to war, you had to make sure you're quick, focused, and massed a huge army before going to war. Now you can go to war and you won't have to worry about falling back in tech. Generally what you will fall back on is happiness when you go to war, which stops growth, which will affect your science in the long term, not in the immediate term. And what it will affect is you won't be able to have built the buildings in your towns that would have made them better because you'll be too busy building military units. So there are effects to going to war. Now gold. In this game it's really hard to make gold. It seems even when you have just a couple of military units that they cost an absolute fortune to maintain, and generally that depends on what government policies you've chosen as well, but otherwise it is pretty hard to maintain a surplus of money. There is no slider where you choose how much percentage of tax you want to do to science and that sort of thing, like you had in the previous Civ games. They've gotten rid of that completely, which, considering you used to have it on maximum most of the time, it's kind of a good idea that they did that. So now if you run out of money and you run out of gold available to spend and you're in the negative, it just takes it out of your science pretty much until you can get back in the positive. So essentially it's moving the slider for you when you run out of money, just like it would have in Civ 4. You just don't see it. It's all behind the scenes. Now, happiness. Cities will grow when they've got enough food and when they've got enough happiness. Now, happiness is done on a nationwide basis at the moment, not on a town-by-town basis like it was in the previous Civ games. Now, this is great, in my opinion, because what it does is it makes the game easier to control. Alright, as you can see, I've conquered half the world here. And if I was doing this in Civ 4, I'd absolutely tear my hair out, because it would take 20-30 minutes just to get through a bloody turn. With empire-wide happiness, you know how your empire is going, and you don't have to worry about each individual city. Which means, conquering half the world like this, I can spend maybe 5 minutes on a turn instead of 20, and still proceed at a good pace, which is great. Just great. Now, happiness I've found in this game is probably the most important thing, because without it, your cities won't grow, and if they don't grow, you don't get any science, you won't get more money. Essentially, every happiness building that you build will pay for itself in the long term, because you'll get more revenue and more science. Anyone who's worried about their money, they're not making enough money, they should build happiness buildings and grow their cities. Alright, Golden Ages. Golden Ages you get now when your happiness reaches a certain level. Every turn it puts points into Golden Age, and when you get, say, 500 points, then you start a Golden Age for 10 turns, in which case you get essentially double the money and double the production. As you can see, I'm in a Golden Age right now, so my money is going through the roof. Normally I usually have about 100, plus 100, maybe plus 50 if I'm in a war, maybe plus 0 if I'm in a war. But with the Golden Age, you get that growth for 10 turns. The other thing about this game that's new is social policies. I'll bring up the menu here. Now, this is where you do all your government stuff. So, at the moment I've got Honour, which is a military-based one. I've got Order, which is a growth-based one, and Commerce, which is a money-based one. Now you can mix and match your points around. So you can put 1 point here, 1 point there, 1 point there. Now, you do get achievements for filling out the whole lot. You have to make sure you're not playing with mods, though, to get your achievements, which is fair enough. Now, you might think every time you pick up one of these things, the old game sort of gave you a positive and a negative for each one you picked up. These days, you just get a positive for each one that you pick up. Now, that might sound bad, but you don't get these very often. So, for every military one that you pick up, you're going to be missing out on your commerce-based ones. See, look, I've only got 1 point commerce. I've got like 3 in Order, where I could have had 5 or 6 or 7, and it would have been making even more money. So for every one that you get, there's going to be another one that you can't get or won't get as soon. So it does affect you. Now, there is the Utopia project, which is a way to win the game. Essentially, if you fill out 5 of these, you can build the Utopia project and you win the game. Now, social policies victory can be hard. You really got to focus on it from the get-go. It's something you can't just get at the end of the game pretty easily, like you can with getting a space race victory. After you've conquered the world, you can pretty much get a military victory or a space race victory, depending on what you're trying to do. Hell, you can even get a UN victory, or maybe. But if you're going for the social policy victory, you have to pretty much go right away. Now, resources have been changed. Everything sort of adds to your empire these days. Like I said, it's gone to a broad-based nation building sort of game instead of just a city building game. So if I got mouse over happiness here, you've got luxury resources on the world giving me increased happiness, which generally makes them more of a strategic resource in a way, because bigger cities are going to get you more construction, more research and everything, so they're very important, very, very important. And you've got your strategic resources up the top here. Now, instead of, say, getting iron and having enough iron to build 50 units from the one iron, each iron essentially gives you like between 2 and 6 resources, which means you can build 2 or 6 units depending on what your things are. So I could build, for example, I've got 30 at the moment, I could build 30 iron units, 16 horse units. Coal just lets you build factories, so I could build another 6 coal factories in my empire, and that sort of thing. So in the old games, taking resources off people didn't really matter too much because they probably just lost nothing. They probably would have just found another one, mined it. Now if you take them off someone in this game now, it actually matters. You know, if there was uranium on the map, there's usually only 2 or 3 uraniums. Making a race for those can be very important. They get you nukes, they get you nuclear power plants. Here's the uranium right here. So it varies. Alright.